I'm your host and your featured storyteller today, Lorna Czarnota. We're coming to you live from my living room, Story Haven Studio. Actually, that's my website too, storyhavenstudio.com. I have a copy of my book, Medieval Tales That Kids Can Read and Tell, and this is the book. I will be telling a couple of stories from this collection, although there are also stories that I tell in my programs for 6th grade and up. I do a lot of different kinds of storytelling for younger students, but my medieval tales are for grades 4, 5, 6, and up. Today's stories, the first story I'd like to tell you is called Lech and the Nest. It's a story from Poland. So Lech was a duke, and he loved to hunt, especially he loved to hunt birds. He was one of those brooding types, but I guess that's to be expected of anyone who is a leader. They have so much on their minds and so many responsibilities. And so he liked to go off by himself and think. Well, he went hunting with his courtiers one time, and while his courtiers were talking, he sort of sneaked off, came to the side of a rocky, craggy mountain, and he climbed up to be alone and think. When he was climbing, he happened to come upon an eagle's nest, and there were eaglets in the nest. Lech got to thinking, it would be really nice, and maybe even a status symbol, if he could take one of these eagles home and train it. He reached out to take a hold of the eaglet in the nest, when all of a sudden, the mother returned from hunting for food for her children. When she saw Lech there, she placed herself immediately between him and the nest, flapping her great wings and pecking with her beak. She was not going to let anyone harm them. But Lech, he was a leader. He wanted one of those eagles, and so he would have it. And he fought back against the eagle. The eagle was fierce. Lech drew his dagger. The eagle pecked at him and beat her wings, and he stabbed at her, and at one point he actually managed to stab her in the breast. Red blood welled up on her chest, turning her white feathers red, and Lech's dagger was covered in blood. But still he wanted one of those eaglets, and so he lunged again and again, and even though she was wounded, the mother eagle fought against him. And he finally had her pinned among the rocks, and he could have taken her at that moment. But then he realized she was only trying to protect her young. She was courageous and brave, like the people of Poland. They would protect their country no matter what. And so he left her there, along with her eaglets, unmolested. He climbed back down to the base of the mountain. His courtiers met him there, and he told them, "It is upon this hill we will build a great city, and we will call it Gniezno, the eagle's nest, for the people of Poland who are as brave as that eagle." And they erected a new banner, a red field with a white eagle, the Polish flag. That's the story of Lech and the Nest. The second story I'd like to tell you is one that a lot of storytellers are familiar with. It was one of my favorites, and it's from the Arthurian cycle, you know, the many legends about King Arthur. And of course, we all know that, you know, he pulled the sword from the stone, and that's how he became king. that there was a prophecy even before Arthur was born that the warring kingdoms and peoples of Great Britain would be united under one king. And Merlin, of course, he was the one who took the baby Arthur and raised him, made sure that he was kept safe for that day when he would indeed pull the sword from the stone and be crowned king. And so he had united Britain, all under one crown. The prophecy was fulfilled. It's not an easy matter, just as Lech in the last story wandered off to think. Arthur had a great deal to think about as well, and so he liked to go hunting. He didn't have to take a bodyguard or his sword or his armor because there was peace in the land. He took just the clothes, his hunting clothes, his bow and arrows. Well, one day when Arthur was hunting, he happened to spy a magnificent white stag with its head bent, eating the grass at its feet. And Arthur thought, dinner. He took his arrows, drew back the bow, released, and that arrow was swift and straight. Now you know, and I know, that an animal that should not be white, but is white, is probably not an ordinary animal. And before that arrow could strike the stag, the arrow and the stag disappeared. In its place was a great man, a giant of a man, green from head to toe. His hair was green, his face was green, his armor was green. He was the Green Knight. Who dares to hunt in my sacred forest? Who dares to hunt my sacred stag? His voice was like thunder. And Arthur answered, I am Arthur, King of Britain, and this forest is in my kingdom, and therefore you, sir, and everything in it belong to me. King though you may be, said the Green Knight, today I will kill you. And he raised his weapon to charge at Arthur, but as I said, Arthur had only his bow and arrows. He raised his hand and he said, Halt, Sir Knight. I am no coward, but I will fight you. But today we are not equally matched. Can you imagine a world, a time when two people would not fight unless they were equals? It was the code of knighthood. Very well, said the Green Knight. You will fetch your weapons and your armor. You will meet here in 1 year and a day, and then I will kill you. But then something curious happened. The Green Knight said, or you can answer a riddle. Now, I don't know why he would give Arthur that chance to answer a riddle, but the truth is, perhaps he saw that Arthur was a weakling compared to himself, or thought so. And so he decided to give his foe another opportunity to save himself. And this is the riddle that the Green Knight asked him. What does a woman want most in this world? And then he vanished in a puff of green smoke. Well, Arthur, he went to Camelot, and he went at once to the wisest woman he knew, his wife Guinevere. He got down on his knees and he said, My wife, a most curious thing happened today. I met a very imposing foe who could kill me indeed, unless I answer this riddle. You could save my life. What does a woman want most in this world? She said, That's an easy question to answer, my husband. Any woman would want a husband like you. And Arthur thought, it's a good answer, but it didn't feel like the answer that would save his life. So he thanked his wife, and he thought about it for a long time. The days turned to weeks, the weeks turned to months. He asked everyone in his kingdom. One day he decided, I must go out on my way to meet this Green Knight. I must find this answer and ask everyone that I come upon. So he set off on a journey. He came to some women who were down washing their clothes in the river on the rocks. He said, ladies, I am Arthur, King of Britain. And they did not stop what they were doing. I have a question to ask you. Still, they kept working. What does a woman want most in this world? Now he had their attention. They rolled up their sleeves, dried the sweat from their brows. Leisure time, my lord. A woman needs to rest. And Arthur thought, good answer, but maybe not the right one. He thanked the ladies nonetheless and continued his journey. It was getting very close to the day he would meet the Green Knight, and he came to a small city. It was market day in that city, and he saw a likely group of men gathered in a little cluster. Oh, the sights and sounds and smells of market day. Well, he went up to that group of men and he said, merchants, what does a woman want most in this world? They held up their wares. Dresses, my lord, jewelry, my lord, husbands to spend money on them, my lord. And Arthur thought, good answer, but it could not be the right one. And he thanked the merchants. Well, it was the very day he would meet the Green Knight, and he was filled with sadness and remorse, disappointed that he did not have an answer suitable, ready for the fight. He turned his horse toward the forest, and they passed through a little swamp. The bushes in that swamp began to rustle, and Arthur thought, a wild boar. But he had no bow and arrows that day, and he was not about to soil his good sword on a wild animal. Well, what came from those bushes was no wild animal. Oh, it had a snout for a nose and tusks for teeth, but it was a woman. Her hair was all matted with mud and debris from the bottom of the swamp. All kinds of bugs crawled on her scalp. Her arms, her face were covered in open, oozing sores, and she smelled like rotting flesh. Arthur, come closer. Arthur had no desire to get close to that woman. I know the answer to your riddle. Now what could he do? This might be his last chance to save himself. And so he drew near. Oh, he closed his eyes so he couldn't look at her, and I suppose he plugged his nose. She whispered in his ear, and Arthur smiled. Lady, if you are right, I will reward you. If you are wrong, say a prayer for me, for today I die. And he left the lady there and rode into the forest. There he found the Green Knight right where he had left him. "Arthur, I see you have returned. You are a man of honor." "That is true. I do not know if I would have had the courage to return." "Why did Arthur?" "Because he was a man of honor. He made a promise and he kept it." "And now," said the Green Knight, "I'm going to kill you." And he raised his weapon. But Arthur held up his hand again and said, "Sir Knight, I am no coward, and I will fight you if I must. But where is your honor? You promised me the chance to answer a riddle." "Very well," said the Green Knight, "be quick about it then." And Arthur began. "My lady wife said that a woman would want a husband like me. But though I wear a crown upon my head and robes upon my back, I am like any other man, flesh and blood. I do not think that is what a woman wants most. The men in the marketplace, well, they said dresses and jewelry, but those things disappear in time. And the ladies washing their clothes, they said leisure time. And while it is good, if it is all that we have, what is it worth?" "No," said Arthur, "I think that what a woman wants most in this world is the right to choose her own way, how she will live." "Oh!" cried the Green Knight, "my sister told you!" And he vanished in a puff of green smoke. Arthur went back to the swamp and he found that lady there. He said, "Lady, what is your name?" "I am Dame Ragnell." "Well, Dame Ragnell, you have saved my life, and now I will take you to Camelot, where you will be rewarded." And he helped her upon his horse, and off they rode, with flies buzzing around their heads. When they arrived at Camelot, everyone stared in disbelief and whispered, "Who is that foul creature? What is that foul creature? How could Arthur bring that here to our castle?" And when Arthur said it was a woman, it could not be. And everyone gathered. The knights were there, the knights of the Round Table, and the ladies in their fine dresses. And then Arthur told the assembled, "This lady saved my life, and now she will be rewarded. What do you want, my lady?"
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. I will marry a knight of the Round Table.
There was an audible gasp. "Oh no! How could Arthur give her to, one of their knights?" And they were forced to watch as Dame Ragnell circled the table, and she looked at each and every knight.
Ah, Bedivere? No. Ah, Lancelot? No. Sir Gawain? I will have you.
"No!" cried the ladies, "not the handsomest, not the bravest, not the knight we would have for ourselves." But the choice was made. Now Gawain, he was Arthur's youngest and most honorable knight. He could have, and perhaps he should have, leapt to his feet and run away. but he was honorable. And so he stood, and he took Dame Ragnell's hand in his, covered in open, oozing sores as it was, and he kissed it. My lady, if it is my king's wish and yours, then I will marry you. And they were married that very day. Now I know all of you have been to weddings. Dancing, singing, joy, merriment. Not this wedding. Oh, the musicians played, but who could dance? They were busy watching the bride and groom. Where they sat at the high table, they had washed the bride's hair, but the bugs returned. They had given her a bath, but the sores returned and spoiled her gown. And who could eat? They watched the bride tear her food apart with her hands. Grease ran down her arms, drool ran down her chin, and she stuck her face in her water bowl like a wild animal. And then it was time for the wedding night, when the bride and groom would be alone together. Gawain took his wife's hand and led her away to their bedchamber, where it was dark, and he was very glad it was. Dame Ragnell sat at the foot of the bed.
Husband, would you not light a candle to look at your new wife?
Gawain really had to think about that. But another code of knighthood is respect for women, and he would not dishonor her. She wished him to see her, and so he lit a candle. And I know you gentlemen know that candlelight can make a woman look beautiful, but not Dame Ragnell. She looked as hideous beneath candlelight as she did beneath the sun.
Husband, would you not kiss your new wife?
He had to think about that, but again, it was his wife's wish, and he was a clever knight. So he kissed her cheek.
Not that kind of kiss. I want a proper kiss, as a husband should give his wife.
Oh, he really had to think about that. But he would not dishonor her. And so he closed his eyes and he kissed his wife upon the lips. The room was filled with the scent of wild flowers. And when Gawain opened his eyes, there at the foot of the bed was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. And Gawain said, "What did you do with my wife?" "Gawain, I am your wife." "Oh no," said Gawain, "that can't be. My wife is a hideous hag." "Gawain, I am your wife." "I don't understand," said Gawain. "How can that be?" "Ah, Gawain, you married me of your own free will. No one made you do that. And you kissed me of your own free will. You respected me. And so you broke the spell put on me by my brother." But now the lady looked very sad. "But alas, I can only be this way but half the day.
The other half I will be the hideous hag you first married.
So you must choose, my husband. Which will it be? Would you like me to be beautiful by day, that all of your friends will say, 'Oh, Gawain, what a wife you have,'
and hideous when we are alone together?" Or would you have me hideous by day, that your friends would tease me, throw stones,
and beautiful when we are alone? Choose, my husband. Which will it be? And for this Gawain did not have to think long. He fell at once upon his knees. He took both of his wife's hands in his, and he said, "My wife, it is not my right to choose how you will live your life. Only you can do that. Oh, my husband, you have made me the happiest of all women. For in recognizing my right to choose for myself, you have broken the spell completely, and I choose to be as you see me now, always." And so it was that Sir Gawain and Dame Ragnell lived out their days in Camelot together, and they were Camelot's most blissful couple. I can't tell you how others saw Dame Ragnell. I can only tell you that in Gawain's eyes, she was always the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Thank you. Thank you for coming to the Storytellers Cafe and listening to the stories today. That is one of my absolute favorite stories, not only to tell, but to listen to. So thank you for coming. Probably we are going to move the Hump Day Tales from Wednesday afternoons to once a month in the evening, and they won't be hump days anymore. They'll be a different kind of format. We'll be online for a while. But we really want to thank you for supporting the Storytellers and the Storytellers Cafe. And if you would like to leave a tip for me, you can do that at my PayPal account, which is listed on the program announcement, and I will also list it with this video when it's posted. But thank you very much. Stay well.